Let's hit the high road. Let's hit the high road. It's the first touch, strong connection. It lays deep in your soul. Feel the kindness strongly coming. 'Cause you can achieve your goal. Let's hit the high road.
Hi, this is Nancy Urel, and welcome to Nancy's Psychic View on the High Road to Humanity. And Elizabeth Cunningham is joining us today, and welcome to the High Road.
Thank you so much, Nancy. I'm glad to be here.
I'm excited you're here. She's written so many books. We are so blessed that she's here. We're going to talk today about The Return of the Goddess. It's a divine comedy. Now, this book, I will just say, I'll give you a little background here, was first published in 1992. She actually started writing it in the 80s when she was a mom with young kids. But I'm going to tell you something. It's a Halloween one. As I was reading, even though it's the goddess, it talks about Halloween, and I couldn't put it down. It's amazing. And you guys, we're blessed she's here because she is the descendant of generations of episcopal priests. She grew up hearing rich and sometimes terrifying biblical language, which she was not in the church or school. She read fairy tales and fantasy novels, and she wandered into the enchanted wood of an overgrown, abandoned estate door to the rectory. Her religious background, the magic of fairy tales, and her experiences in nature is what has motivated her to do this work. Now, she has written the Maeve Chronicles. It's a series of award-winning novels. Celtic Magdalene Elizabeth is pleased to introduce new and long-time readers to the new edition of the book. So she brought it back because we need the goddess. And
Yes.
she's going to tell us how she connected with the goddess. And this is all about the goddess. And this is going to be a really fun show. So I want everybody to share this because it's important that we learn about the goddess, because I feel like we just haven't, we've been like, I think she's almost been like disguised or kept from us in a way. You know, that's how I feel intuitively.
Hiding in plain sight.
It's true, isn't it? Yeah. Before we even get into it, and it's going to be a fun show today, I want to just bring up, this come from the NPR, Israel and Hamas war. The UN chief says his Hamas remarks were misrepresented. I don't know if you guys are keeping up with what's going on, but here's what's happening. So the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said his comments at a Security Council meeting on Tuesday have been misrepresented by Israeli leaders who called for his resignation. The Gaza Health Ministry reports the death toll has climbed to 6,546 people. These are souls. These are people. As a leading aid group says, local fuel supplies could run out. Now, here's the scary thing. The leaders from Hezbollah, Hamas, and Palestine Islamic Jihad reportedly met yesterday. They had a little meeting to discuss the next steps. So I'm just going to say, everybody, prayers out there to stop this, because this unrest is escalating. And I feel like it's really going to escalate. That's what I feel like intuitively. I give you my intuitive take. I don't want to sound, the light always wins, good always overcomes, but this is going to be a bad situation. I want to mention that Mike Johnson, he is the representative from Louisiana, and he's a congressman, and he looks like he's going to be the Speaker of the House. And I think it's really cool. And I just want to bring up that on News with Nancy this week, I predicted that he was going to be the one. So you could all go back and look. And the only other thing, what'd you say, Elizabeth?
Hold you accountable.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's funny, I'll do my psychic prediction, and I just gave it. And then today it came out, and I was like, oh, okay. Anyway, and just so you know, y'all, comes from angels, didn't come from me. So before we get into the book, I want to mention that this is the headline: Superintendent cancels Halloween. Bans costumes in school, citing DEI and potential harm to students' dignity. You guys, I love Halloween. Don't you love Halloween, Elizabeth?
Yes.
Well, this is what it says. A New Jersey school
Wait,
district
hold-
canceled official, what?
Oh, New Jersey, you said?
Yes, New Jersey school
Wow.
district canceled the official school-wide Halloween celebrations,
Yeah, I think
citing
that's been happening for a while. Yeah.
citing its diversity, equity, and inclusion values and the purported potential for the festival to be offensive to people from various culture and religious backgrounds. I just want to say, come on, you guys, there's some things in life that we just have to have, and Halloween is one of them. What do you think about all this, Elizabeth? I want to hear.
Well, I would say that Halloween, which is also called All Hallows Eve, is a pretty interfaith holiday. There's some equivalent of it in many cultures. It exists in the church, and it also exists among people who are earth-centered. It exists, it coincides, I think, with the Day of the Dead in Mexico.
Right, correct.
I think it's the time of year in many cultures and many religions when you realize, oh, we're on a continuum between life and death.
Yeah.
And we're one community. And I think it has a great potential for good. I think that the reason why people find it fearful and make it into something fearful, which, can be silly and or ghoulish, is that because we are we're mortal. We're afraid of death. We don't know. Maybe we do know, or maybe we have intuitions, but in this life, in this incarnation, those of us who are still living and breathing haven't stepped through to the other side yet. And some of us are scared and some of us are curious. But we all have ancestors over there, and we all have people we love over there. And one of the prayers I pray every day is for the people who have died suddenly, and the people who have lost people to sudden death, whether it's catastrophe or war. And I always ask the ancestors and the angels to come and help.
Right. And they do. And I just want
They do. I'm sure they do.
They do. And just, yeah, I'm an angel communicator. You probably don't know that. And I can tell everybody, yes, everybody has a guardian angel.
Yes.
Everybody has a guardian angel.
And I know the angels must be really busy right now.
Yes, they are.
Yes.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
And I'm just so glad you're here to talk about the goddess. Before we get into it, I just will say very quickly that, as you were talking about Halloween, the Day of the Dead is what they celebrate in Mexico, and it's honoring the dead is what it does. So
and the church does that too. The Christian church does that too. All Souls, All Saints. That's the communion of saints.
That's right.
Which we're part of.
That's true.
Yeah.
Now, I'm curious. I have to know, because this just blew me away. This book, you guys, you're going to have to pick this up. It's just come out again. The Return of the Goddess. She is an ancient. You say she is ancient, as old as the human reckoning of time, maybe older. But how did she come to you to write this? Because she wanted you to write this.
She did. Yeah.
Okay. I want to hear your story.
Okay.
All right.
So yeah, and in many ways, my own personal story was what I tried. These are the characters are not me, none of them, but what happens in the book. Well, I'll tell my story and then I'll tell how it relates to the book.
Okay.
I was a young mother, as you say. I was in my childbearing years, and I had one miscarriage, and I had a toddler, and I wanted to have a second child. And then I was in the midst of a second miscarriage, and I was feeling like I was thinking about what I had written and how I had never really written about the church itself. And, I thought of all the books that I had written and what was I writing about and why was I writing it? And I think I was trying to distract myself from the fact that I was having a second miscarriage. And then I heard, how you hear voices. Well, you know how you hear voices.
I do. Yes.
And I was on my way to a doctor's appointment, and I was asking these questions about what do I write? Why do I write what I write? Why have I never written about the church? And I had written, my first book was called The Wild Mother. And another book I had just finished was about a wise woman living in the woods. So I heard this voice, and the voice said, "You have been looking for me all your life." And then it was like everywhere I looked, I could see her. And I realized, oh, I have been looking for you. And that's who I'm especially needing and missing now that I'm a mother and that I'm going through grief and loss. And the rites of my church don't really address my experience
Yeah.
from here down.
Yeah.
And so I knew, so that's how she came to me. And I think it wasn't like everything was suddenly clear and I knew who she was. I mean, I'd read, books about Greek goddesses, maybe Egyptian goddesses, but I knew nothing about the goddess. I knew nothing about the goddess as a presence that could speak to me, as a presence that was embodied in me and all around me in the earth. So, I mean, my first question was, oh, well, who are you and what do you want? And what does that mean for me, who, considered myself a fairly Orthodox Christian at the time? How
Mhm.
do I integrate this? How do I incorporate this? How do I put this together? And,
Yeah.
and meanwhile, it's having babies and taking care of children and doing all that.
Yeah.
And so that question continued through my second childbirth and raising children. And then I really began to realize, of course, and she said, she kind of turned it around. I was like, what do you want from me? And she says, well, what do you want?
I love it.
And I
Oh,
said, well, you know what I always want? I want to write a novel. I want to write about this. I want to be able to express this. And that's when the opening scene came to me, where the minister's wife is sitting on the back steps on Halloween with the leaves flying all around and the evening falling. And she has made some homemade Play-Doh. And she's playing with her children and talking to them and saying, and they're like, oh, they're making dinosaurs. And she's saying, oh, what's that? And what's that? And she's just playing with her Play-Doh. And then all of a sudden her son says, well, what are you making? And she looks at what's in her hands, and she has made this figure of this powerful female figure that basically is giving birth to the whole world, to the earth. And she's like, who are you? And what do you want from my life? So she ends up with my same questions. And what I wanted to really convey in this book, once I started writing this book and started doing research and started asking questions, I realized I was not alone.
right.
People had written about this subject. Other people were experiencing this. Other people were meeting and talking. Many of them had the same experience of the goddess just coming to them spontaneously, the way she did to me. And that's what I wanted to write about. I didn't want to write it, well, my character said, who's the goddess? And so she signed up for a workshop. Or my character, said,
Yeah.
who's the goddess? Oh, let me go to the library, which of course I did all those things. But I want people saying, the goddess is here. She's in my life. I don't know who she is. She's changing my life. She's challenging my life. So she does that not only with the minister's wife, but there are three other characters.
Right.
There's an old woman who's
Yes.
bedridden in the little house next door, who is a very, longtime devout Episcopal lady, although she's not terribly concerned about orthodoxy at all. And then there's a wild wood, like the one that I grew up next to, and someone who's keeping the wood, who's a very mysterious figure, who's probably
the caretaker. The caretaker.
the caretaker.
Yeah.
And then there's a real wild card who is Marvin, who's just been released from prison and who's coming to stay with his one of his female relatives who's an Episcopalian. He's Black, he's streetwise. He used to be a player. Now he doesn't know what he's doing. And the goddess comes to him too in a very mysterious way. And so they all start to get linked by their spontaneous experience of the goddess. And in the meantime, I am asking those questions as a minister's daughter of where are the roots of this? Well, the roots are right there in Christianity and deeper than Christianity, and they're all intertwined.
Well, let's talk about that. And first of all, I just need to say, this is so intriguing and so well written. I couldn't put it down. This is, I mean, you're a wonderful writer. I just have.
Oh, thank you so much.
I was just like, wow. I felt like I was in the story with you, and that's when you know it's really
what you
written.
want.
Yeah, that's when you know it's good. Talk about this. It's just in the past, and I'm pretty naive when it comes to the goddess. I've interviewed people who've talked about this, but nobody's really gotten to the root of this. Why? I almost feel like, okay, this is what I feel like, and you can correct me. I feel like men wrote the Bible, took the women out of it, and the goddess got left out. That's how I feel. Am I correct?
I think I think there's a lot to that. I think she sneaks in various places, but yeah, she was quite left out, although there are amazing female characters in the Bible, but they don't really get their own point of view very often. Although we have Mary, the mother of Jesus, singing the magnificent Magnificat. But one thing that I was not raised Roman Catholic, and one thing that Protestants notice from our vantage point being raised in the Protestant churches, oh, y'all have Mary. We don't get to see her very often. I mean, she comes out for a little bit at Christmas, and then the women come out for a little bit at Easter, when they go and see Jesus at the tomb. So,
Right.
but otherwise they're missing, and it's like, I miss them. I felt like I really, really missed them. So yeah, I think one thing that's happened is a lot of people have been writing the lost story. There's my kitty.
I know my cat does that too. That's why I'm laughing.
Yeah,
I love it.
Bridget, that's
Hi.
right. This is Bridget. Yeah.
I
Yeah. So yes, they are missing, and I don't know exactly why. The same thing happened in a lot of cultures around the same time, is that there was a cultural shift, and it seemed, I don't know, I can't explain the roots of patriarchy, but it happened and we have it. And there's been an imbalance that I think many people are trying to address in many ways.
Yeah, I agree, because and I agree with that wholeheartedly, because it all became male. I can even speak for myself. As a real estate broker for many years, I wore the suit, tried to be like the guy, because that's the only way I knew I could succeed. And that it has to come back into balance, where it's the male and the female, because the female, I believe the females were in charge a long time ago.
They probably were in there. Who knows? Maybe there was an imbalance then too.
Right,
But
where it was more female and less male.
if you think about it, if you're just on this earth, figuring out this earth and living from the earth and being completely sustained by the earth and not having anything between you and the earth, then the earth is giving life. You see the women around you, they're giving birth. So it makes sense that the first thing people knew was the mother earth and the mother goddess. Not that the goddess is only a mother, not that female only has to mean mother, but it does make sense. And then, and I think one little problem that people may have had back in the days of matriarchy, or back in those earth-like days, was like, I think this is speculation, but I think there was a time, and in some cultures still is, where everyone raises the child, where all the female relatives raise the child, where everybody's raising all the children, and all the children are welcome. And whose child it is did not become a huge question for a while. And I think in patriarchy it did. Like, how do I know that's my child? How do I know? Well, if I can't control the woman that I'm with, then I don't know, and I don't like that. So I think that's one of the roots of patriarchy, is really feeling like the need to establish, well, who's got my genetic material? And I think it's a time when maybe we didn't focus on that so much. It was just like, oh, good, here's new life.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then, but once you say, well, it has to be my child, then you run into a lot of things. Patriarchy, private property, handing things down only to your own line, things like that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, no, I'm curious.
That's all speculation, by the way. I'm not a scholar or a historian.
No, but I just think that's an interesting take on it. Now, I need to understand this. So she's here, and she seems to be wanting to come back into view, or is it us that are raising our consciousness and bringing her back? Why do you think the return is of the goddess right now?
Well, it's probably both and I think that I think one of the things that the goddess represented, and why all those religions were for a while so reviled, sort of back to, I need to control who's my progeny and who's not my progeny. There is sort of like an overall need to control and subdue. And in some ways you can understand that. If you feel like you need to be in control of agriculture and everything else, because you have to make sure you're going to survive, and you get carried away with the idea of control, then part of what you come to mistrust is the earth itself, all the things that can happen that are calamitous. You start to mistrust the body can get sick, the body dies. So you keep trying to reach for something that is not of the earth, that's more than the earth, that's better than the earth, more certain than the earth. So I think part of what's happening is that the earth itself has to be recognized as a living being. And I think some people see the goddess that way, not so much an anthropomorphic. You can see her as Athena or Bridget or Isis, or all who are all sort of have images that relate to human women, but there's also like the earth itself. And I think the earth is really needing our attention.
Yeah, I agree with that.
There's
Well,
a
and
song- yeah.
go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, a song that I learned to sing in some earth-centered circles was, "The earth is our mother, we must take. She will take care of us. The earth is our mother, we must take care of her." So I think that part of the shift is, instead of seeing the earth as this thing to be feared, or the body as this thing to be feared, or death as this thing to be overcome, it's like, yeah, we're here, we're on this planet, we're mortal, we're embodied, we can nurture each other or we can harm each other. So I think that's all part of the return of the goddess too. It's like, let's not despise what we're made of.
Yeah.
There is probably something after death, as we were talking about the veil being thin, but I don't think that means we're supposed to despise where we are right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. We can make it heaven on earth if we want to. We choose how we want our reality to be. And I always tell the audience, of course, I connect every day with the divine source and that energy, and I stay balanced. And, but a lot of us have forgotten about the earth. I always forget the ground. And so I've got myself a copper ball that I hold on to. And I really have to think about rooting myself down into the earth.
Right.
It has to be, it's actually it's a practice that you do in order to ground yourself. And grounding is so important, because if we don't ground, if we're not in touch with the earth, we are just out there. We're everywhere.
A lot of religions, just to put that image of grounding, a lot of religions, whether Judaism, Christianity, Islam, all the older religions, the earth-centered religions, a lot of them have the image of the great tree, the tree of life.
That's true.
And in some sense, even Christians in some sense see the cross as the tree of life. That it's a lot about the tree, which is why in the book there's a lot about the sacred grove.
Yes.
It from being cut down.
Right. Exactly.
And now we're seeing all the fires that we've seen all summer. Our trees are in peril, and our trees are how we breathe, and the life in our ocean. The corals in peril too. Right. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and I always talk on the show, and I would like for you to talk about it. The energy comes from the earth is very healing. I know that if I go out, take off my shoes and stand on the ground, I can feel the energy coming up through my feet. I know that the Native Americans, they probably still do it. They used to do it, where they would take the babies who were sick and they would put the babies down into the dirt to heal them, because the earth, and that, I think we've forgotten that part. And I would like to see that come back. What do you think about this? That it's healing,
It is. I think the earth itself, like you say, if you are out there barefoot, you can feel it. Yes. And I'm sure there are a lot of practices that involve connecting with the earth. That's interesting that you bring that up. The other thing about the earth is that we're all made of it.
Yes.
So when we have so much division and strife, the thing that we have in common is, we need food. I think there's a lot of ways that people could connect through sharing food and sharing the way they cook food and prepare food, so that instead of having wars, we had feasts.
There you go.
Potluck feasts. I know it's not as simple as that, but when you think about it, one thing that overcomes political and other divisions is food. And one of the things that we have to address is, how are we growing it, and how are we distributing it? And we all need it. So we can't, no one can say, well, I don't need food.
And that's become a big thing too. All this genetic altering of our food has been a real big thing. I don't go out to eat. I can't go out to eat. When I go out to eat, it makes me sick. I will say, yeah, and it's gotten to the point, I'll just, since you brought up the food, this the other day I bought some natural hamburger and I made my stuffed peppers. I make the best stuffed peppers ever. And I got so sick because it's almost like, and I'll just say this,
Yeah.
I feel like, not to get out there, but when you're really connected, your body rejects that, because my body completely rejects that meat that is, that is
Yeah.
out there on the market, and I can't eat it. And I feel like our food supply is becoming more and more contaminated, and I could feel that. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Oh yeah, I think that's a really, I mean, I'm talking about, oh, let's have a nice big potluck feast, but to talk about food, I think that is one of the fundamental things we have to address, because
Yeah.
I'm a vegetarian. I'm not like a militant one, but I think when we think about how is food raised,
Yeah.
like the animals that are raised commercially do not have a life that can be called a life. And you can't be superior and say, well, I'm a vegetarian, I don't eat them, because a lot of the way our other food is raised is by people who are, being underpaid and working in terrible conditions. So I think merely to talk about the goddess, it's not irrelevant at all to talk about food, because the earth is the source of our food, and how we treat the earth and how we grow the food is part of honoring the goddess and honoring life. So yeah, I think that's like a fundamental that we have to look at. If we're going to eat meat, how is it raised? What life did that animal have?
Yeah.
Going to eat not meat, how did the people working in the fields, how are they treated?
Yeah. Well,
Kind of
because it makes a difference in your food, because
Yeah.
everything's energy and it's all energetic. And
Yeah.
so I've realized this over time, Elizabeth, and I'm sure you know this, but if you have an animal like the chicken, I can't really eat chicken so much, but either, because it's like you said, they're not raised with any kind of life. There's no freedom. And
Yeah,
that
made
energy,
into a factory.
yeah,
Yeah.
the energy gets into you. When you eat that, you're eating that negative energy, is what I feel.
Yeah, you are what you eat was an old saying from, I don't know whether it was the 60s or the 70s. I'm
Yeah.
very lucky where I live, because there are a lot of community supported agriculture
Nice.
farms around where I live.
Nice.
Also, I think that one of the things that may be more accessible, at least anywhere that there's any countryside, are eggs raised on small family
True.
farms.
True.
It
And
does make a big
yeah.
difference. Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. Let's so do you talk to the goddess on a continuous basis still? It sounds like you're friends. Yeah.
Friends, yeah. I'll tell you, you mentioned the Maeve Chronicles. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not to, so just this book was my first, like, who are you? What do you want? What's going on? And I loved writing this book. I was in love with writing this book. I think it was one of the happiest times of my life.
Yeah.
And I used to talk to the characters. If I didn't know what was going to happen next, we would have a little meeting. And I would say, okay, so, and each one of those 4 characters would speak to me, and it'd be like, oh, okay, I hadn't thought of that. Thank you. And when I finished writing this book, I just felt so bereft and homesick. And I felt like, oh, I can never write again. I have nothing more to say.
Oh my gosh.
And that's when I started, now we're going to get into Maeve now, because you asked me if I talked
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
So I ended up drawing pictures, and I drew a picture of this big bodacious redhead, and I said, who are you? And she had a sort of 20th century incarnation. And then I said, wow, could you be in a novel? Because I'd really like to have you in a novel. You are so cool. And she didn't think any of my conventional novels were very interesting at all. And finally, one day, her name was Madge, and I thought, Madge, Magdalene, a lot of the same letters, red hair. Well, I said, would you be in a book about the Celtic Mary Magdalene?
Uh-huh.
Because what I felt I was missing, even after writing this book and after connecting with a lot of people who did earth-centered ritual, and after feeling like I love the goddess and I knew the goddess and the goddess is everywhere, I really wanted a goddess who was like incarnate. Like what I was missing most, and I wasn't really missing it because I still talk to Jesus too.
Right.
I am an incarnationist. I love that somebody who is, like God incarnate could have a bad day and could get annoyed and could have to need to wash the dust off his feet. And I said, I want an incarnate goddess. I want the goddess who's walking on this earth and stubbing her toes and having a bad hair day. And I want a human goddess. And so that's who Maeve became for me. And I spent 20 years writing from her point of view, 4 books. And after that, you could better believe I was bereft, except that I knew Maeve was never going to leave me. And she never has. So for me, there is sort of like the goddess who's everything, who's the earth, who's all of time, who's the cosmos. There's that goddess. And then if I need help, there's Maeve. And I don't do this. If I wake up at night and I'm having a problem, I just say, Maeve. And she says, I'm right here.
See, now that's how I feel about my guardian angel.
Oh, I love my angel. I have angels too.
Right. Yeah. So that I do the same thing. If I have a hard time, I'm like, hey.
It's like, it makes it very immediate. I mean, I feel like I feel like maybe that is a human need. There's this great expanded cosmic thing. And then there's this, like, I really don't know what to do about this or that problem that I'm having. And I have to talk to this person tomorrow. And she really helps ground me. And she also helps cut through all I just want to do it right. And I want to be perfect. And I want to always say the right thing and never offend anybody. And did I offend? All that stuff that's really mine. She's like, right. It cuts right through it. And so I feel like, and I think the thing about a character like that, and of course, Maeve is a fictional character, but for me, she's an aspect of the goddess, is that when something is that real to you, and comes out of your own need, then she becomes real to other people. So it's very cool because I've had people say, I talked to Maeve the other day. And girl gets around. I don't know everything she does. And I'm like, she also got in a lot of trouble in her life. So just be careful.
I love it. I love it.
She's a very human troublemaking goddess who's rash and impulsive and makes mistakes. But she's divine.
I love it. I love it. That's so cool. This has changed your life, hasn't it? Meeting the goddess.
Oh, absolutely. I think it was like one of the watershed moments. Yeah. And yet, in a sense, I think like she said, you've always been looking for me. So one of the things that I remember from when I was 3 years old, my father was a minister. So that's the background to that story. For some reason, I was really angry with God and Jesus. And I decided that I was going to roll a boulder over on him, and like in a Roadrunner cartoon. So that was how serious it was. So
oh my God,
my cousin told me, oh no, you better say the Lord's Prayer right now. But and I've eventually made friends with them, or anyway with Jesus. But that's how deep it was for me. My struggle with the church was that old. But that same summer that I had that memory, that was the first summer that I met the ocean. And I remember being 3 years old and running into the foamy surf and singing my heart out. And to me, that's my first encounter with the goddess. I was 3. I didn't know, this is the goddess. But I was like, I am ecstatic. I am embracing life. I am embracing the ocean. And I, maybe forgot all a moment about killing God. I was like,
well, why did you feel that way? Do you think it's because you were raised in a strict household, or what made you so angry against God and Jesus?
Oh, well, my father was a pretty scary person. I think he was a very good parish priest, but he had a lot of problems as a father, and he was unpredictable and raging, and he drank, and sometimes priests do that, and lots of other things. And I also saw him as being very unavailable. And he was also a workaholic. Like, whose fault was that? God's.
Oh, I see.
Probably in my mind. I don't know if I thought that. I don't know if I was able to think in terms of cause and effect. That was probably more emotional. But it's interesting to me that I had my run-in with them, which I, as I say, made peace with Jesus. But also the same summer, I'm like, I'm singing to life. I'm singing to the goddess. And
well, with a release, it was like,
and also it was this huge embrace. So when I had that experience happen to me in the midst of my second miscarriage, and the goddess came to me, as soon as I recovered from that miscarriage, I knew I needed to go away by myself for a weekend and go to the ocean. I had the impulse to go back to the ocean. For me, it was a 4 or 5 hour drive from where I live. So I went to the ocean just to be near her. That was how I knew to connect with. There's other ways to connect, but I went back to that 3-year-old who was embracing the whole ocean. I
Yeah.
went to the ocean, and that's when yeah, she talked to me again. She says, "You're gonna have a daughter. You're gonna name her Marina." And this was before she was even conceived. And I went back to my husband. I said, "Yeah, we're gonna have a daughter, and we're gonna name her Marina." And he said, "The place where you tie up boats?" And I said, "No, Marina, it means of the sea."
Of the sea. Oh my
And
gosh.
I did have a daughter, and I did name her Marina.
Oh, God bless. God
Yeah.
bless.
So, but that was another time that voice came to me very strongly as I was by the ocean. I was grieving the loss of, another child through miscarriage. "You're going to have a daughter. You're going to name her Marina." Okay.
That's fabulous. Well,
Yeah.
I want to say something about the water because I'm the calmest at the water.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people are, just like you were speaking of. It's and I've always felt a connection, but I think it's because we are made of, I think it's 70% water.
Yeah. And that's where our first home was, floating around in our mother's ocean.
See, oh my gosh, talk about that, Elizabeth.
Well, we were floating in an amniotic fluid before we're born. And we're listening to the whoosh, whoosh, whoosh of her blood and heartbeat.
Oh, when you talk about that a little bit in the book with the minister's wife when she goes to take a bath and she connects with that, and so you bring that up in the book, which I thought was really cool. Yeah, and I want to say I don't want to spoil the book for anybody or for myself actually, but she makes this goddess, and she makes it out of Play-Doh, which she had made homemade Play-Doh, and the husband finds it and he freaks out over what she does. And it's almost like, well, yeah, that's probably what would happen
with that guy. Yeah, I have to say that there's wonderful characters in this book, but poor old Alan, he's well, he deserves what he gets, but he's kind of there to stand in for all the stuff we're talking about, which is hatred of the body, fear of women, fear of loss of control. And I'm sorry, Alan, I just couldn't make you any more three-dimensional. You had to be there.
I know why you probably brought this back. It's time.
Well, my publisher decided to bring it back. Yeah.
What does the goddess say about it?
She's always like, "Yeah, another edition. Cool. Yeah, do it." Yeah.
Yeah.
And I hope it does dovetail. I hope it is time. I hope it gets to have another life. And yeah. And in the book that I really only like to write novels, but for some reason I wrote on this thing called My Life as a Prayer, which is coming out on November 7th.
I know. We're going to have you back.
Yeah, I'd love to come back. A lot of the stories, like the one I just told, I do tell the story of how all those books came. So the goddess definitely is in this book, and the story of how she came into
My Life as a Prayer. And it comes out November the 7th?
Yep, November 7th. And it's called a memoir, but I chose what I included in it based on, the things that I've learned about prayer and the communities that I grew up in and that I joined later, and all the transformations that I went through as a member of a believing community, because there was Episcopalians, Quakers. Then the goddess came and turned my life around, and I did have an earth-centered community that I was part of. And then I became an interfaith minister. And now I just turned 70. I think now I'm sort of in my hermit phase. Not that I don't see people, I see people all the time, but my ritual life is more of a hermit's life now. So it's all about that. And then it's all about everything that I'm thinking about prayer. So in the second half, but I'm still thinking. So I could have kept writing it, but it had to end somewhere. Well, but my thoughts about it do not end. My thoughts about prayer are ongoing.
Right. And I want to talk about that because I'm I am on the same wavelength as you as far as I really believe in the power of prayer. And I'm writing a new book right now myself about angels and prayer, but it's a spoken word. And I want to talk about this and I want to hear your take on it. I have learned that the spoken word, the vibration is so powerful that it goes out into the universe and the universe responds. And so, I had a girl on my show and she talked about her near-death experience. And what really got me with her near-death experience was her family was praying. And as she was out of her body, she was watching the prayers go up.
Oh, wow.
And
Wow.
that was so cool because I know, like in my heart and soul, that when you pray for something, that God hears you. And
Yeah.
when you pray as a group, that's why when people come together and they pray, no matter what denomination they are,
Yeah.
energy goes out and it changes
Yeah.
things. So that's why I've been like telling people, really pray for Israel, really pray for this whole situation, because
Yeah.
we actually have the power to stop this. What do you think, Elizabeth?
Well, I don't know. I guess I also, I've prayed in a lot of communities, and when I pray by myself in my backyard now, every day, I feel like that is a community too. And it's
Ah,
interesting what you say about the voice, because I also have a lot of time where I go in between the worlds into what I call the presence, and that's a silent time in the middle of the night. But when I pray in the morning, I do pray out loud for everybody that I pray for and for all kinds of things. And lately, I've certainly gotten the guidance that I have to also sing.
yes.
Singing is really important. I
Yes.
don't know I have seen, if you pray a lot, then you see things happen and you say, oh, wow, okay. I don't know if I think of prayer so much as a cause and effect. If I pray, then this will happen. But I feel like if I pray and I'm in alignment with all that is, with the spirit that lives in and through all things, and release that, whatever I'm praying, I often say, okay, I have what I call bossy prayers sometimes, like where I know exactly what should happen. I have a counseling practice and I'll just, and she needs, blah, 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 and then I say, what I'm talking about. But what I feel about that is that my intention of caring for that person, even if I'm really off base about what they need, the spirit that lives in and through all things gets it. And whatever needs to happen will happen. So I don't know. I think we have to pray for Gaza and Israel just because we have to. I don't know what that's going to mean. I don't know how that's going to be answered. But
Right.
I trust that it will be in some way.
Right.
I've
And
also, when you said that thing about she saw the prayers going up, I was told
yes.
by somebody once that someone who was in an accident and was in that situation, that there was someone praying and that they were very aware of the prayer. So now if I hear an ambulance siren or something, I just pray for whoever that is. Because I don't think we know, but I think of all the things that we can do that cause harm, prayer is not one of them. Because I think prayer will be taken and used for good, however we pray.
I agree. Yeah. And what I've learned, which, somebody told me this a long time ago and I laughed, but now I've evolved a little bit. So I even pray for people who are not so kind sometimes, because what I've realized is, and maybe you'll address this too, when people aren't kind, it's because it's something within them that is hurting, or is out of balance, or they're angry, or they're fearful. And so instead of, a lot of us, we take it to heart, but instead of doing that, I think I've learned over time, pray for that person because it had nothing to do with me, or,
Right.
and that's been a big aha thing for
I
me.
think that's a really great practice. Yeah. And I pray for those people too.
Yeah.
When I don't always remember, but when I can, then I understand. Yeah, that's the response.
Yeah.
When I catch myself making a drama or getting stuck in something, I say, oh, okay. I need to release this into prayer.
Well,
'Cause
yeah, we hold on to things. That's something I'm going through right now. We all hold on to stuff. I think that's something that's learned when you're a child, to hold on to things, and just releasing, really is freeing for the soul. Well, I want to know, like, what does the goddess have to say about what's happening in the world right now? And Is there some positive information that maybe you can?
Oh, well, I think I think we are in a moment of, I think there's so many things happening in the world that are so difficult that I don't know. Maybe the best thing I can say is that it's going to be harder and harder to be in denial. And everything, whether it's on a large scale or a small scale, is reflecting it. The large is the microcosm and the macrocosm are amplifying each other.
Mhm.
So that wherever you're divided or not aligned, or wherever the world is, you get a chance to look at your part in that. And and pray.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it's everybody working on themselves and going in and fixing themselves is going to help, I think.
And I
I
think,
want,
or praying, like one of the things that I also pray, because I'm 70 and I'm not going to be out there in the field necessarily, although I work with people, but I think it's always good to say, well, I ask for guidance. What's my part? Big
yeah.
or small? Please make sure I don't miss it.
Yeah, I always ask for God to guide me every day.
Yeah.
And the other thing I want to talk about really quick is love before we get out of here today.
Oh, let's talk about love quick. Yeah.
Well, I've got, I don't know, 15 more minutes if you're good to go.
So that's good. I'm game for it. Let's go. Let's
Okay,
do it.
cool. Because and I want to say this, and I always put myself out there, but I don't care. I'm here for a reason. So I looked for many, many years to find love because I had a mom that was a narcissist and my dad was always at work. So I was looking for love in all the wrong places. And I can remember even being a little kid and just feeling empty on the inside. But when you do connect with the divine source, you can say God, you can say energy, you can say divine source, then that's when I actually realized that I'm loved. And it changed my whole life.
Yeah.
Because it didn't matter if a person didn't love me. I knew source, God loved me. And when you feel that, then you start to love, and then you're able to, and I think we've lost that so much. And I want you to talk about it.
I think you just said it as well as anybody could ever.
Oh my God.
I think you really did, because I think that way we're coming from full. I mean, full and empty is sort of like, that's a natural rhythm. But if we need someone and something outside to fill, then that lands us in trouble a lot.
Well, and that's what I see. Everybody's looking for the new phone or the new computer or the new hairstyle or the new outfit.
Yeah.
Or, if I just had that, I'd be happy. Or if I just had that new car, I'd be happy. And that's where our society, this is what I really feel, has gotten so lost, because really the fulfillment comes from inside.
Right. It's what you said before about being grounded, that we're not. And and we are bombarded all the time with so much and information. But I don't know, I'm thinking about this book.
Which one?
The one that we're talking about.
Okay.
I wrote it back in the 80s.
It's so good. And I have to say, I was shocked that you curse a lot in the book.
Oh, yeah. And I'm a minister's daughter. What can I say? We curse a lot.
It's like, what?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But this book, I mean, I have to tell, I don't think it's a spoiler for you to know that Esther and her husband aren't going to make it.
Yeah, I don't think they make it.
I was in a phase of my life, I think, and for many years, and finally I'm like 70 and it's okay, where I think that passionate romantic love was a preoccupation, even though I was, married and faithful and all that. Like that human longing and how it is part of divine longing. I think that's really what the characters are learning. There are two love stories in this book, two really passionate love stories. But I think what you were just saying about the love coming from the healing that they're going through, then the way they love is not in that desperate grasping way. It's in a way of, this is how we are healing. We're healing ourselves and each other through this love.
Mm-hmm. That's really great. Thank you for saying that.
Yes,
I want you
the old people's love story and the 30-something people's love story in this book.
Well, I want to say, I wrote this down. In the course of writing this book, you say, this novel, I discovered that there were others like me and who had similar encounters with the goddess. And just briefly, if you wouldn't mind, once you started to connect with her and you started to do research, then you started to meet people who also had this?
Yeah, I did. I met people and I started going to circles.
Okay.
And what I really liked, I mean, I have been an Episcopalian, which is lots of ritual and lots of music, but very from here up, except singing is always whole body. I
Okay.
mean, Bach is whole body. And then I was a Quaker and I loved that silence. I felt like when I was a Quaker, in some ways, what gestated was the goddess. But I have a great love for Quakers, but I didn't end up being able to stay. When I started going to goddess circles, it was like, oh, this is what whole body praise and worship feels like. Because there was dancing, there was singing, there was weeping, there was
Oh, wow.
ecstasy. I don't know that all goddess circles are like that, but the ones that I found my way to and the ones that I eventually was part of creating at a center that I ran, it was like, oh, it was like what you were saying is like, you can pray alone, and pretty much now that's what I do. But when you can come together in a community and transcend just your individual stuff, then there is a sort of communal prayer and release that happens.
Mhm.
And for me, that was very beautiful in goddess circles.
Um,
Lots of singing, lots of dancing, lots of drumming. People would weep if they needed to weep. They would laugh if they needed to laugh. They'd embrace if they needed to embrace. But it was in a ritual context, but so much more full for me than traditional ritual, although I loved that too. And
Right. Well, I did a drumming circle in New Mexico, but I've never done the goddess circle. And is that pretty much across the United States and the world that they have goddess circles that you can join?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you?
Well, I think there's different, like there are circles that are as formal really as probably the Catholic Church or the Episcopal Church, and those weren't the ones that I was drawn to. It was a woman named Starhawk who
Okay.
wrote Dreaming the Dark. I went to some of her workshops and I really learned the essentials of ritual from her, which is that you have to create a container for the energy that you're raising. And it
Right.
has to be a safe container and a clear container. There's usually some theme or story, often based on which season it is. But then within that, there's room for spontaneity. So I think I don't know how I would go about finding a circle today, because I eventually sort of just created one.
Okay.
I expect they are everywhere, and that you ask around, you might go to like there's near where I live, there's a shop called the Dreaming Goddess, and it's a shop, it's a gift shop, but that woman knows everybody and knows all the circles and would know how to connect
How
someone.
to connect. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would say that if you have a shop like that in your area, something that sells, books, crystals,
Mm-hmm.
things like that, that would be a good way to find out, well, who's meeting in circles. I mean, there's always the internet, but word of mouth is good.
Yeah, that's so cool, you guys. So for everybody out there, you can find your own goddess circle. I think this is really cool.
You can make your own goddess circle. Yeah. And there's tons and tons of, there's also, a lot of people have recorded chants, like
Mhm.
many wonderful chants that people sort of have taught and passed on.
Right.
And it's like an oral tradition, really. Like most of the chants that I know, I just learned from other people.
Right. Right.
Didn't learn them in a book.
Right.
For what we've been talking about, here's one
Okay.
that I probably sing differently than other people do, because I learned it. It's like it changes a little bit, but it
Yeah.
goes, earth my body, water my blood, air my breath, and fire my spirit. And that's because a lot
That's
of God
beautiful.
will call in and honor the four elements, and
Right. Bringing in the air, the water, the fire, and the earth. Yes.
And another one that I learned from someone was, mother, daughter, sister, lover, hear us, heal us. It is you we seek within us, goddess, guide us. So if you start going
That's
to
beautiful,
school,
Elizabeth. You have a
learn-
wonderful voice.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's one of the things I loved about goddess circles. I love about them is that there are simple chants. You can learn them in 2 seconds. You don't need to hold a book. And then people start improvising and harmonizing, and it becomes something totally alive. And
right, the energy.
Yeah, it's energy. Yep.
Yeah, it's healing. I love it. You guys, the return of the goddess. Everyone needs to pick this up. I am so happy that you brought it back, and I am so grateful to meet you and have you on my show. I am going to finish this book. It's amazing. I hope you'll come back. I want you to come back and talk about the prayer book. I can't wait to read that one.
I'd love to come back with this. I think we've really already been talking about it as much as the other books, because I think it's a subject that we both feel passionate about. So I would have loved to come back and talk about my life as a prayer.
Thank you. That would be wonderful. Yeah. Elizabeth Cunningham, thank you for joining us. Your website, you guys, if you want to find her, it is, and I thought I had it right here. What's your website, Elizabeth?
ElizabethCunninghamWrites.com.
Yes, and I looked it up. You have a beautiful website.
Yeah, if you go there, you can, I think I tried to get the flashing thing saying sign up for my newsletter off, because I think that's obnoxious, but I couldn't. Anyway, and if it's not there, you can scroll down and you can sign up. And I don't send a ton of newsletters, and they're not tarted up. They're just like, oh, here's what's happening when anything is. So I would love it if anyone listening would sign up for my newsletter.
Fantastic. You guys, I just want to say before we get out of here today, I re-released my book, Wake Up, the Universe is Speaking to You. I did it last week. It's not as perfect as the first one because I didn't have anybody do it for me, but the information is still the same. And this is really good for people who are learning about this stuff. I'm also writing a new book. You guys, I'm sorry?
I'm going to look for that too.
Oh, thank you. And I'm working on my new book about angels and about spiritual law. I did mention I'm going to be in LA, and I'm going to be teaching angel communication, and I'm going to be teaching spiritual law, and that's going to be in February. So I hope everybody will come and see me at the Conscious Life Expo, and that's 2024. And so I'm promoting that because I think it's really important that everybody come, and I'm going to make sure everybody gets their wings. So having said that, I will get out of here for today. I hope everybody has a fabulous week. Say prayers for everybody out there. Say prayers for your neighbors. Say prayers for your friends. Say prayers for the United States. And everybody take care and God bless. Let's hit the high road. Let's hit the high road. It's the first touch, strong connection. It lays deep in your soul. Feel the kindness strongly coming, 'cause you can achieve